Yeah, I'm here today with Andrea Foster. She's the SVP of Marcus Hotels and Resorts, as well as an advisory board member for EVPassport. How you doing today, Andrea?
I'm great. How are you, Chris?
Wonderful. I'm really excited to have you on the show today. I thought maybe today we'd start by just hearing a little bit more about you, getting a feel for your background. Obviously you're involved in a number of things right now. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Great. Well, thanks so much for having me. It's super to be here. I appreciate everyone who's tuning in and listening to us today. So as you shared, I'm SVP of Development for Marcus Hotels and Resorts, where I focus on growing our portfolio of hotels via acquisitions, including joint venture investments and management contracts. We are a management company for hotels as well as an investor. 87-year-old company. We're based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Where I lived for the first 5.5 years. I was with the company. Last year I relocated and now work remotely from the DC area. And let's see, so a little bit about, how I ended up here. If we go way, way back, my path started when my parents, my dad is a retired investor, developer, serial entrepreneur, and my mom is a retired teacher. They opened an ice cream shop that my mom ran and where I worked since I was 11. So that was the first time I got to provide customer service. And, I'm a people person. I absolutely loved it. So we'll skip ahead from there. I decided there's another whole story of how I truly found hospitality, but I'll skip over that for now. But I ended up at Cornell at the hotel school and did my undergrad there with a degree, obviously, in hospitality, but focusing on operations and real estate finance were my concentrations. Then after graduation, I started in hotel operations, which I found very valuable in my career. And that's kind of the path I wanted to follow on the rooms division side. So, I wasn't on the food and beverage side or sales and marketing. Specifically, I was on the rooms division side. My first job was front office manager, then rooms division manager, and then went on to consulting with PKF Consulting. Then into business development and marketing. I worked for a company called Miraval for about almost 5 years, and then went back into consulting when PKF Consulting, which had then acquired by CBRE Hotels, that's what it's more known as today, reached out to me to run the Boston-based New England practice for CBRE. So I did that for another 5 years, and then Marcus came calling. So I've been at Marcus for almost 7 years now. So that's quite the run. I think, quick summary of how I ended up where I am today.
I love the lightning round version of that. That was awesome. But clearly you've gained a ton of experience and I can imagine the insights that you developed. And is that kind of what led you to the advisory position with EVPassport, or how did that come about?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So, one of the things I know we'll talk about more is networking, the importance of connections in the industry, throughout, because, we can't achieve anything without other people. This is not just a one person, run through life. We have to align with others. And so EVPassport came about. My receptiveness to the opportunity was because I believe so strongly in ESG. So for those who are new to the term, environmental, social governance. On the environmental side, let's take care of our earth. I've done it since before it was cool, to the best of my ability. Never perfect, but I always try to do better, be better. And so just having a care and concern about the environment, is a piece of that. Social is another. And I know we'll talk a little bit about how I'm involved on the social, side of, advocating, supporting, mentoring. But in this connecting, I met the chief marketing officer, the person who is now the chief marketing officer for EVPassport. I've known him for over 15 years. And so through the industry, he's a marketing expert. So we connected a long time ago and have stayed in touch, over the years. And he reached out to me when the company, which EVPassport is an electric vehicle charging company. And he said, we have success in our scaling in industrial, in office, in multifamily, but we really need some introductions and some support through expansion in hospitality. We are building, and they have since launched, a hotel cloud, which is fantastic. And so that's an exciting step into something very unique and experiential around electric vehicle charging. So it's not transactional, it's an interactive experience. So in that, he said, we need someone who's really steeped and connected within hospitality to help us navigate, the flow and process, and make sure that everything we're doing is really serving the needs of the hospitality industry. And first, I believe in people, the people you're connected to, good people working and interacting with good people and helping people within good companies grow. That's important to me. And then just being able to make a difference within my industry and doing it, in this ESG, supported way, it was a no-brainer for me. So after meeting, the team, understanding more about the company, it was a huge yes. And I'm excited about, what opportunity lies ahead for the company and how I can continue to support that, in whatever way I can, with introductions and just supporting the need for technology in our industry. It's so important.
Absolutely. And, I think what I love about your purview and kind of where you sit in the industry right now is that, you're able to be involved. You've got great oversight. You've got the ability to be able to drive your passions, which is absolutely wonderful. But one of the things that I know that our listeners love to hear about is kind of what's changing, what's next, right? So from where you sit right now, what are some of the, some of the changes, some of the things that you see have been just moving in our industry?
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a great question. And, if only we all had a crystal ball and could see everything that's ahead. But, what we've seen, the recovery in the hospitality industry coming out of the pandemic has been driven by leisure travelers. I mean, we saw that everybody wanted to, go on revenge travel, couldn't wait to get out of the house, probably cooped up with their family too long. But it was initially driven by that. And what we're seeing now is that there's some continued leisure travel, now that we're into the summertime. So of course it scales up a little bit when kids go back to school. We're seeing some corporate travel come back and we're seeing groups start to book again. But what's really unique in this recovery is average daily rate is so strong and is actually leading the recovery more so than occupancy, which is something that's actually backwards from all previous recoveries. And I will give STR and CBRE and all the the researchers credit for this. This is something that they have been researching and they have been sharing at industry conferences, and it's pretty unique in that. And so, as part when guests are paying a higher ADR, a higher rate for their room, their expectations go along with that. They expect an experience. They expect service. They expect. These are basic things. I'm not sure this isn't rocket science, but their level of expectation grows with how much they're paying. And I'm sure we can all as consumers relate to that. So, but the industry is also challenged with labor. Hospitality industry isn't the only one, but finding labor and filling open positions has continued to be a challenge, ever since we started seeing demand after the big dip, that happened when COVID really hit us. And so we have to start finding new ways to interact with our guests, to meet their needs, to deliver exceptional service, but in efficient ways that don't overburden our associates. So what I see is that, what's really happening in all of this. Conversation could go in many directions, but I'm going to focus on a digital shift.
Okay.
I remember conversations and panels that I was on prior to the pandemic, when there was resistance around adding new technology to hotels, because there was always this question of, but does that take away a human interaction? Does that in some way prevent us from having a face-to-face interaction that makes a guest stay even more wonderful? Big question there. So, but then all of a sudden you end up with, in a pandemic where now, oh no, I don't want to go anywhere near another human. We need to stay away. We need to socially distance, as we're calling it. And so technology got this big boost, and all of a sudden it became necessary. So mobile keys was one example. People didn't want to go to the front desk and either wait in line to check in or simply didn't want to interact, for fear of again, physical proximity.
Right.
And so they wanted a mobile key. Another one is texting with guests. All of us bring our devices, our smartphone with us. And I'm going to make the assumption that you, Chris, are like I am. I carry my smartphone, my iPhone with me where I go. I use it for a lot of things. Sometimes I have to put it away somewhere and forget where it is because, we're too
Right.
attached to it.
Of
But
course.
we text with our family and friends. We order, to go food on an app that, we learned how to do by opening the app and figuring it out. I mean, all of this is, the learning process has become pretty quick. So we expect that same, interaction at a hotel. When I go, I'm very happy to interact by text. If I need someone in person, I'll go find someone in person. But for the most part, it's just convenience, quick, questions, answers, and solutions. So I think that's another. Let's see.
Well,
I already mentioned word search. Go ahead.
yeah, yeah. So it's funny, right? Because this is like the conversation the owners always wanted to have, right? Which was, why can't you drive the rate, lower the occupancy, and we figure out what happens on the other side, right? And that was always the interesting conversation. And then it always turned to, well, what about technology? Could we use technology to supplement some of the labor so that we can offer better value in other areas?
Right.
And the argument was always adoption, right? I'm sure, obviously, the guest experience was one of them, and would we lose points of service? But it was always adoption, right? And somebody
Right.
would use like their obscure grandma or aunt or uncle and be like, well, they don't know how to use a phone. Everybody knows how to use a phone now, right? So like,
Yes.
so I feel like the pandemic did answer a lot of questions for us, right?
Yeah. No, you're 100% right. No, adoption is key, and we all know how to use it. I mean, and speaking of, that older generation you're talking about, the grandparents, their grandkids are teaching them how to use it. I mean, I'm not on TikTok, but you know, I see it via Instagram. There are grandparents on TikTok because their grandkids say we have to do this, this little dance, and so it's happening, and it's more and more required. I mean, anything we call for, and I mean, I'm just, medical wise or anything else, you go through a series of steps that are technology based. So we're learning fast, and all of us who I call, we're digital immigrants. I got email my junior year of college, so
Right.
digital immigrant. But digital natives, the ones who were born and have used it all their lives, I mean, they're teaching a lot of us, who have had to adopt, over the course of time. They're teaching us how to use things. So I think we're there. You're absolutely right. And so a couple things just around that. I want to first address one more thing on the labor piece is
Mhm.
something some hotels, and we are doing this in a couple of our independent hotels, we're testing out a robot that does housekeeping. So cleans bathrooms in hotel rooms.
Wow.
So, and it's a big robot. It kind of, replaces the human, aspect of that, because when
Right.
you have open positions in housekeeping, it's important to figure out, how do we overcome that? So we're testing this out. We don't roll things out until they're, close to perfect, make sure that, we figure out what the bugs are and make sure that the end product is as expected. It meets, needs expectations. But that's another one that we have to start embracing technology in order to continue operating. And, ideally that improves margins, of
Of course.
hotels. But right now there is obviously some R&D around, the expense of that. And then another piece, you talk about adoption. Let's circle back to EVPassport and EV charging. One of the big things, and back to why I joined the advisory board role, is the importance of being able to provide the services that our guests need. And one of the things that I think our industry might be a bit slow slow to recognize is how fast some of these things, adoption wise,
Right.
are coming down the pike. I say that literally and figuratively. People are buying EV cars. It's not just Tesla anymore. There are over 100 models of electric vehicles that are available for sale to consumers, and they're all different price points. It's not just the really expensive. I mean,
Right.
we're getting down to much more affordable versions of these cars. Hertz is just one of the rental car agencies that have ordered 100,000 electric vehicles. And so before someone even buys an electric vehicle for themselves, they may end up renting one. And, so you're on a trip, you're on a vacation, or you're on a business travel, you've rented an EV car, you're going to have to figure out, where do I charge this? And that may be the initial step into, oh, I really like this. I'm going to consider buying one when I get my next vehicle. So this is happening. It's happening in real time. And yes, some hotels have put in some electric vehicle charging stations. It might have one or two here, but it's not, or at least it hasn't been at the forefront of thinking of how do we service this need that our guests will have. And there's a point coming where if hotels are not installing them and are not prepared for this, then all of a sudden you're not going to get the business of the person who's driving an electric vehicle, because they're going to go to a hotel somewhere else in your market because they know that they have a reliable charging solution. And then the other is creating a revenue stream around it. I use this analogy a lot. I park in parking structures and parking lots, and whether I pay for it or not, I don't expect anyone to put the gas in my car. I don't expect free gas. People who drive electric vehicles aren't expecting free charging. So there's an opportunity to create a revenue stream there and to adjust the revenue based, or adjust the pricing rather, based on the loyalty level of the person. Are they a hotel guest, or are they just charging as a passerby? While they're charging, are they popping, into your restaurant and, having lunch or something, incremental revenue based on that traffic. So being in this role is exciting to me, to be able to help our industry address a really important need that is coming, again, as I said, down the pike a lot faster than, is speeding down the pike toward us. And we really need to be prepared for that.
Yeah, one of the things I loved about talking to Human Shahidi, who's the president and co-founder of EVPassport, a few weeks ago was, he said, this is kind of like the internet was, except the internet had such a slow arc and slow adoption because of the barriers to entry, getting it out there. But then people will not stay in a hotel without internet now. Well, EV charging, it's coming faster than the internet is. The adoption is much higher, much faster, and much more necessary, because you literally can't get from point A to point B without somebody having the service available for you. And if people aren't getting on board right now, they're going to be left behind. And it's going to be much quicker adoption, much quicker than the internet. I mean, the internet took almost, 14, 15 years for people for it to be everywhere.
Right.
This is going to be less than a decade, right? This is going to be less than 10 years. It's going to be, everybody's going to have it.
Yeah. Well, and by 2030, a lot of the car manufacturing companies are saying we're going to be making primarily or only electric vehicles by 2030. And some of them are saying it a little earlier than that, versus others. But at some point, you're going to go to, look at cars, and the only new car that's going to be available is going to be an electric vehicle. You can buy an old car, a pre-owned car, but those will be available. But if you want a new car, and if you're one who gets a new car every couple of years and, stays up to date on the new technologies that are coming out, and you want that, cool feature in your car, the feature is electric charging.
Love it. Love it. Andrea, I want to be very useful in our time here. And one of the other topics I wanted to touch on, as I prepared for this interview, right, one of the things I noticed is that you are really passionate or really into career development in our industry. And, I've seen a ton of media out there for you supporting women in our industry and the growth of their careers. Would you mind taking me through a little bit of that passion and kind of what you're doing, what you're working on now with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for asking, because I always love to talk about this as well. So first, my passion for the industry. I mean, it started, like I said, age 11, age 14 was when I decided that I'm going into this, this career path. And I find first and foremost hospitality an incredible opportunity where someone can start in an hourly job and can end up as CEO. You don't need a medical degree or an engineering degree or any in order to do this. And I realize I'm speaking as a graduate of the Cornell Hotel School, but that is one path. It is not the only path to achieving, a leadership role in our industry, and a very fulfilling career taking care of people, providing service, servant leadership, some will call it. And as hoteliers, we call it life is service, because, I believe that's what we're here to do, is to take care of others, around us as well as ourselves. So I'm excited about just, the hospitality, industry, as a start. And then I've been a career-long, as you said, advocate for the development, mentorship, and sponsorship of women leaders in our industry. And it's just so important, because when you look at the higher tiers of our industry, as you get up to, executive leadership, it's not very female. It's also very white. That's a whole other.
That's a whole other conversation, right?
Exactly. And so the diversity of both is so incredibly important. And the only way we're going to get there is if hotel leaders in these roles are developing, mentoring, and sponsoring. So developing, helping provide the skills. Mentoring is, again, giving that coaching and guidance. And sponsorship is a whole other thing, which is actually putting people up for opportunities, not just mentoring, but helping other people make decisions about, who would be great for that role. You should look at this individual. So really actually helping them move up the rungs, within the industry. So, I've been both a formal and informal mentor for, I think my first mentor officially was the year I graduated from college. So I had a mentee who was in college, just 4 years younger than me. And then since then have been in formal positions of that and informal. Mentorship can happen anywhere. I say one time I had a woman sitting next to me on an airplane, and I was busy working away. And she kind of looked over and watched and asked, may I ask what you do? Like, what do you do, for work? And I explained, and she asked a couple more questions. She goes, I think you're someone I want to know. Could we? And I thought that was it was a great way. She wasn't shy about it. I was really proud that she took the opportunity to ask. And then we did for the next couple of years, we did talk on, every month or two, and just she updated me on what was going on, and I helped her make some decisions. And, so it doesn't have to be a lifelong. Some are lifelong mentorships and involvements, and some are just, you're in one another's life for a period of time, and it helps them jump to the next step or learn, something that, they may have needed to learn along the way to help them propel forward. So I'm involved in on the advisory board of AHLA, which is the American Hotel Lodging Association Foundation's Forward Initiative, which is Women Advancing Hospitality. I'm one of the past chairs, as well as on the advisory board, and have been on an advisory board of a group called Castell at College, which is now actually part of the AHLA Foundation. So, and then I'm a luminary and coach for an initiative called She Has a Deal, which is helping women get into hotel ownership. So, another thing that's really important is there are not a lot of female owners of hotels out there. So again, it's all about leaders paying it forward, and reaching back, bringing people up with them. The term "all ships rise together." I believe that where we can all join hands and lift one another up. Over the course of our careers, and I love to see when people are doing that. Are not only developing themselves, but are really passing that on to develop others. It will make the difference in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think, mentorship also a passion of mine as well. And I think that, like you're illustrating here, right? You don't have to be a 20-year veteran to be a mentor. You can be a year one, day one. You have something to add valuable for somebody else. And you can't
100%.
shy away from that. You can't shy away from that.
Well,
awesome.
I'd love to, to your point, 100% agree with you. And I do always say, it doesn't matter where you are in your career, in your life, somebody is always looking up to you. And so, if whether it's your younger siblings or cousins or whoever, somebody is watching what you're doing. And, I always look at that and say, are the decisions I'm making and the actions I'm taking, are they ones that I would want someone else to follow? Because I feel it's important in my time here in this, this life to make sure I'm making choices and taking steps that I would want others to emulate. And so, because you never know who's watching, and you never know who's going to say, watching her or watching him made a difference. I saw something and I followed in the footsteps. It's the story I didn't tell how I got into this, into hospitality is I went to a business dinner with my dad. He was president of the board of one of Marriott's vacation club, ownership groups. And the next day was the board meeting. And he met with a woman who was the resort manager. We all had dinner together, and she brought another woman, I think, her VP, with her. Mm-hmm. And so here we are at a business meeting with two women, and the woman, Cindy, who did, most of the talking, she was the one in charge. I was absolutely taken aback at how articulate she was, how just she seemed powerful without being aggressive. I mean, she just knew her stuff. She knew how to communicate. And I just sat there. I'm not sure I said more than hello and nice to meet you and goodbye. I was 14. I was a freshman in high school. Right. And, but Dad had said, come on this trip with me, get your homework, and come along. And we walked away from that dinner, and I was starstruck, and I said to my dad, I want to do what Cindy does. I want to be her. I've shared that with her since. I actually interned for her, before I went off to Cornell. But I don't know to this day if she knows truly how much, her presence that evening and how she conducted herself and the things she spoke about influenced my entire career. So I just remember that, small things are big things, just depending on who's watching and what the situation is. And so, may we all, approach our decisions in life accordingly.
Awesome. That's amazing. And, personally, I'm a huge advocate of Merit Advocacy Clubs. Worked for them for years. So that's a whole nother conversation we can go into. But,
Part 2 podcast.
That's right. That's right. So, just to kind of wrap this piece of this up, one of the questions I had, right, is, our industry, anybody you talk to will scream into the wind that this is an amazing industry and there are opportunities every day for somebody. But then you go to look for those opportunities and nobody can find them. What kind of advice or feedback do you have for us as an industry to be able to get our message, our jobs out there, whether it's external or internal as well? Because a lot of times we're really good about telling people outside of our industry, not so much telling people inside our industry.
Yep, exactly. So, first, I think if people are looking for opportunities, start looking at, the hotels and the companies that are managing hotels. So there are management companies out there, they're hiring, within, if you go to our company, it's Marcus Hotels and Resorts, marcuscareers.com. There's a list of opportunities that you can apply for. So that's a first step. Otherwise, when you get to a bigger, broader approach, American Hotel Lodging Association, the foundation, has an incredible initiative called the hotel industry. And it's basically saying it's a place to, to grow, a place to stay. And they're meaning as an associate. So there's a great initiative that they've been doing just within the last several months. I don't think it's actually been quite a year yet, but they're doing to get the word out about the hospitality industry being an opportunity. Because, when you ask kids, what do you want to be when they grow up? They might say, a police officer, a firefighter, a doctor, a teacher. You kind of know what these general roles are. But I think I was one of the first ones at an early age that was like a hospitality executive, and people were like, what is that? So we have to get the word out to students earlier, and that's part of what this initiative is really getting into young adults, colleges, high school. That's what Castell at College is all about, is executive women in the industry talking to hospitality students and, just giving them assurance of, here was our path. Here's how we ended up in our careers to help keep people on that hospitality track, throughout their schooling. So I think there's a lot of ways that we can continue to get the word out. But another one of them is podcasts like yours, like doing what you're doing. People will emulate and will desire to be what they can see. And so first they need to see people in these roles. And so people, in our industry as leaders need to be more visible. And then they need to see people who look like them. That was the other piece is, my dad is, as I shared, developer, investor, entrepreneur. I am just like him. If you saw a picture, you'd say you're a blonde version and female of your dad. So I'm very much the same way, just in my business viewpoint and everything, and how we think and so forth. But I didn't instantly think I'm going to follow the path of my dad because he wasn't female. I wasn't, as much as I am just like him, I didn't really connect with an opportunity to do the things that I'm doing until I saw a woman doing them. And that's another thing that I've always found. So, just to all who are spending their time, sharing their time with us, watching, make sure you're visible and you're sharing your story with others because it makes a difference.
That's outstanding. That's outstanding. Now, I'm going to ask you to share one more thing now as we kind of wrap things up here, which is, I always ask for a piece of advice for that next generation. And we've spent a little bit of time talking about that here. Do you have any advice that you like to give people who are coming up in the industry or future leaders in our industry?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Oh, I love this question. There are lots. And, I always have to think about which one do I share with. So here's what I think is really important. So, and just as a bit of background before I kind of give the
advice,
the punchline,
right.
But I found success in my career by stepping out of my comfort zone. That is so important. Whether it's in pursuit of ongoing learning, I'm going to be learning new things until the day I die, and that's how I approach everything. I may be an expert on certain things, but there's always more to learn. Things are always changing and evolving. Always developing my skill set, and gaining additional experience in the roles that I've taken. I've jumped out of my comfort zone and stretched. And then in the ways, that we talked about, that I engage in our industry outside my day job, getting involved and following my interest and curiosity and passion. And I've even moved all over the country. I mean, East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, back and forth and around, and lived all over in different places to pursue these opportunities. So that was another, outside my comfort zone, especially, at a younger age. Then another, success point for me has been I have a natural aptitude for connecting people with one another. So I love when I know two people who I believe can benefit from knowing each other for whatever reason, personal, professional, and whatnot. I love to make the world a smaller place. So between these two, those address ideally what you know. So always gaining experience and increasing your knowledge base, and who you know, or equally important, who knows you. Because them knowing and remembering you is incredibly important. But those right there are two keys to success: what you know and who you know. So how you can put those together. But the real, the punchline here of the piece of advice is regarding the comfort zones. Don't be afraid to fail along the way. Because if you're stretching out of your comfort zone, you will fail. You will stretch yourself. I once was speaking to a Cornell class and I told them, I want you to fail. And they all looked at me in horror, like I'd just thrown daggers at them. And I'm like, let me explain. If you are not failing, you are not trying hard enough. The whole idea and the goal is to fail forward. So which is deriving the lesson from that failure and applying it to your ongoing efforts. And taking a step back and saying, okay, I failed. Wipe your tears off, stop sitting around sulking, and go, what did I learn? And how am I going to apply that going forward so I don't make that mistake again, but I push further and I'm going to make another mistake again. We've all done it. We're human, we're going to do it. But through the course of, failing and learning, that's how you end up stratospherically improving your success and your learning and your experience of life, frankly.
I love it. I love it. That is probably one of my favorite pieces of advice, because people sometimes get crippled by what could go wrong. They don't ever take the first step, and they're terrified if something does go wrong.
Yes.
Stuff goes wrong. Like if you try hard, stuff goes wrong. Like you just have to get over that hump and just adopt that and just push for. I love that. That is wonderful advice. Thank you very much for that.
Let's cross that question out of what could go wrong and just change it to what could go right.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Think about how much happier you would be if you looked at every situation like, oh man, if I nailed this, what could happen? Right.
Exactly.
How exciting. Absolutely. Much better, much happier. Well, Andrea, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. If people are looking to connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
I would say connect with me on LinkedIn is a super way. So start there and just send me a note with a connection invitation, and happy to follow up from there.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time today. And obviously this has been we went into a lot of directions here on this episode, and I absolutely loved it. So thank you so much for that. I appreciate it.
Oh, goodness. Well, Chris, thank you so much for the invitation. I appreciate your time and being here, and appreciate everyone for tuning in and listening to our conversation.
Awesome. Well, Andrea, I'll see you again in the future. And if I can ever do anything, please let me know.
Great. Thanks so much. Right. And the same to you.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.